This piece carries the long title, The New Middle Class and the Remaking of Our SoHo, our spray-painted little section of the city. If you look at the elements of the painting and then read the work's title, you will easily get it that it's about gentrification or the gentrification of a neighborhood. So the neighborhood being referred to here, which could be a fictional neighborhood, is one that used to be a spray painted little section of the city. So it's a case of urban renewal then. A new middle class that has been infiltrating the neighborhood. Now, the painting's title is actually a play on the title of a book by David Lay, the Canadian geographer who is known for contributions to the field of social, cultural, and urban geography. His book's title was The New Middle Class and the Remaking of the Central City. Now, my painting does not aim to represent the book. What it does is it goes to Lay's approaching the problem of gentrification from the demand angle rather than the supply angle. So what he was basically saying was the demand side, the demand for gentrified communities, is as much a participant in gentrification as the suppliers of these gentrified neighborhoods. If we're to talk about Manila, what would the new middle class in the title be alluding to? I think that would be referring to OFW money, which would definitely be a big part of the new middle class, and investments coming from globalization partners, establishing bases in Manila. And finally, the new Korean and Chinese migration to the Philippines would also have a big part in that. Why did I refer to the old neighborhood as our Soho? That actually references a research by Philip Clay, who propounded, much like David Lay, that artists actually played a role too in the gentrification of several inner cities in the United States and Canada. By artists, I would not limit the word to painters solely. It could also include new filmmakers, still struggling practitioners in architecture, restaurant chefs, even writers. Soho, why Soho? The case of Soho in Manhattan is actually quite known, and Sharon Zukin did a good description of that. For those who don't know what it was back then, Soho used to be an artist's haven because of the low rental rates in that neighborhood. So the neighborhood became an artist scene. There were artists' cafes, little galleries, little bookstores, coffee houses, and so on, which attracted a lot of sons and daughters of the wealthy class, so to speak, who wanted to be part of the scene. So those sons and daughters of the moneyed class started getting units for themselves in the neighborhood, and that started a gradual hiking of rental costs in the neighborhood, finally getting to the point where the artists and musicians and authors living there couldn't afford to stay there any longer. So suddenly, the artists started to move out. And one morning, one of these sons and daughters of the terribly well off class would wake up to a neighborhood now inhabited solely by their fellow sons and daughters of the wealthy class. Okay, the artists they've all gone somewhere else. Well, my painting is talking about a neighborhood that used to be graffiti rich. Okay, and now what has it got? From one point of view, you could say that the graffiti has now been replaced by another sort of graffiti, advertising graffiti. Of course, this is fiction. What you see here in this picture is not what's happening in reality. In reality, the gentrifying capitalist will simply paint over all the graffiti and make everything look like the usual modernist apartment front. It won't look like this neighborhood in my painting. The painting is pointing to an ideal gentrification. It is pointing to the old Soho kind of gentrifier, wealthy but art-loving, you could say with a populist sort of aesthetic taste. Such a gentrifier would definitely want to retain some of the elements of the old neighborhood, even if he somehow ends up retaining only a fraction of it. On the positive angle, the painting may in fact be pointing to such concepts in gentrification and urban renewal as inclusionary zoning. That's precisely why I did the wall images in the painting, the way I did them. You know, it's not entirely clear whether they're still graffiti or advertising graffiti already. The only thing that's clearly advertising graffiti there is that Irish Spring Sport box, which is a product that doesn't even exist anymore. But even that is painted far from how the official ad campaign for the product went. Uh, the marketing people would probably protest at how their defunct soap is being presented here. Oh, and there's the polo sport bag, of course. Why are these two sports brands here? Do they signify anything? Well, I don't know. Maybe because we all want to be part of the trend of wanting to be young and healthy. There's the question as to why the colors in the painting don't seem to have a comfortable sort of harmony. You know, that I seem to have used too many colors. The rule being that a painting must use no more than three major colors. Well, you see, when you go to a spray painted section of any city, they usually wouldn't have a unifying color harmony. None that is not accidental anyway, unless the artists get together and come up with an agreement, which is unheard of as far as I know. Of course, what you see in the painting is no longer that old section of the city. It's already been transformed. It's been gentrified, or shall we say, it is in that process of development, of transformation. You see, as I said, this is not a realist portrayal of a gentrified neighborhood. It has been contrived to dramatize a sort of transition. For this painting to be a realistic picture of a gentrification process somewhere in some part of the world. Yes, it is possible. Because it is possible for a gentrification process to proceed without the involvement of a large corporation, but simply through a neighborhood of individual building owners who collectively decided, separately or together, to invest or reinvest in the neighborhood or in their own buildings for whatever reason. It happened in Nakpil Street in Malate, Manila in the late 1990s, resulting in a neighborhood of new restos and bars. Suddenly, the street was the new nightlife destination. Now, maybe that's the ideal sort of gentrification, wherein you have a dilapidated old money neighborhood getting rehashed by a new generation uh, towards a more updated, gentrified look. In that situation, no one is displaced. The old owners of the buildings are still the owners. There are no new owners. Maybe that's what we have in this main thing, because in that kind of gentrification, no one decides for everybody in the neighborhood. No one decides what color their respective buildings will have. Now, would that result in something ugly or loud or tacky? For me, I don't really care. To me, that ugliness, if it is to be tagged as ugly, that ugliness to me would be prettier than a homogeneous gray condominium building front coming from the aesthetics of a large corporation. As to the figures and faces that I painted here that seem to combine beings from different races, with a white man's face there looking like a young rock star and an Asian face there looking like Takashi Murakami. Well, I really just wanted them to represent a neighborhood that could be a part of almost any cosmopolis in the world. So there's an ad box on the wall there that advertises a show in Gallery Egelund in Denmark. Then there's a Five Below store there that I don't think has a franchisee or brand licensee in the Philippines yet. You can still find unrealistic elements here, such as the oversized hydrant to symbolize large properties' demand for bigger property protection facilities or infrastructures. Is that an elliptical comment somehow on gentrified neighborhoods' larger water consumption? Maybe. After having said all that, let me say that I did not start to conceptualize the painting with all those in mind, with an intention to project a scene of a gentrification in transit. Actually, I only wanted to do either a cityscape or a genre painting within a city because I wanted to project my affinity to the urban myth. But I was also approaching painting like a conceptual artist. So I was thinking about what reason do I have for doing either a cityscape or a genre painting? Because if I can't find a reason, then there's no reason for me to do one. So I asked, what concept can come out of doing a cityscape or a genre painting, which may then give me the reason to proceed? Well, how else to arrive at a conceptual concept, than from an examination of an art form or a genre within an art form and the reasons why painters do them. Okay, so to make a long story short, I thought of the gentrification problem in cities. And then I arrived at the idea of doing a cross between a cityscape portraying a gentrified neighborhood and a genre painting. It was going to be a genre painting because I already decided that it would be zooming in on a part of the city's walls as a loud part of our cities and sidewalks today in this time of gentrifications. That gentrification theme gave me the reason I was looking for to do a cityscape or a genre painting or a combine of both.